Good to have you on SpaceX Daily, episode 25, coming to you from Vancouver. It's July 7th, 2026. From Starbase to orbit, here's your SpaceX rundown. Record Falcon cadence and a fresh rideshare deployment show how reuse margins are widening the gap between annual launch capacity and demand. SpaceX has already surpassed its prior first-half launch totals with 82 missions completed through early July. The pace reflects continued booster reuse gains, with multiple vehicles now exceeding 30 flights. This directly extends the tracked Falcon launch cadence and reuse arc by testing whether pad and range throughput can sustain the current rate through year-end. Next milestones to watch are the cumulative booster flight count and any new turnaround records at SLC-40 or Vandenberg. The same reuse margins that enabled the record also created excess capacity now being filled by high-volume rideshares. A Falcon 9 lifted off from Vandenberg Pad 4E at 0712 UTC, carrying 81 small satellites into sun-synchronous orbit. Deployment occurred over a 2.5-hour window after the second stage burns. The mission continues the pattern of high-volume rideshares that fill excess capacity created by rapid Falcon reuse. Observers will track whether the next Vandenberg flight maintains the same multi-hour deployment sequence. Battery and attitude control margins now stand as the next engineering checkpoint for repeated long coast profiles. The upcoming Starlink 10-42 mission from SLC-40 is scheduled for a July 9th launch window opening at 0905 UTC. Booster B1067 is slated for its 36th flight with recovery on the drone ship ASOG. The thread notes a 3-day 22-hour pad turnaround since the prior SLC-40 use. Listeners following Starlink constellation growth can watch for confirmation of the 186th consecutive successful launch if the flight succeeds. While Falcon keeps setting cadence marks, Starbase hardware teams are preparing the next integrated test campaign. A SpaceX satellite secured a military contract round that drew congressional attention over the balance between rapid capability and open competition. The award occurs while the Pentagon accelerates proliferated low Earth orbit networks. This development sits at the intersection of Starshield hardware and national security launch demand. Watch for any follow-on policy language on source selection criteria. National security demand is another growing driver of launch cadence. Ground cameras captured ongoing Starbase vehicle movements and tower preparations on July 6th. The footage shows continued stacking and subsystem checkout activity at the Texas site. These updates track the hardware cadence that supports the next Starship flight test window. The next visible milestones are expected to be ship or booster static fire attempts. Starship's lunar ambitions depend on closing several key performance gaps before crewed flights. Updated timelines for the Starship human landing system show the sequence of uncrewed demonstrations required before crewed lunar landings. The architecture still hinges on orbital refueling and heat shield performance. This continues the Starship program arc by clarifying how many tanker flights are baselined for each HLS mission. Observers will monitor whether the next integrated test flight closes any of the remaining refueling gaps. Ground infrastructure is also being upgraded to support higher Raptor production rates. SpaceX is advancing plans for an on-site natural gas pipeline to supply methane feedstock at Starbase. The infrastructure would support higher Raptor production and test rates by reducing trucked propellant logistics. This ties into the Raptor engine program by addressing a ground support constraint on engine throughput. The next visible step is any permit or construction timeline update. The Florida Manifest lists a single Falcon 9 mission from Cape Canaveral this week. The flight aligns with the ongoing cadence that has already set new half-year records. This update reinforces the tracked Falcon launch cadence and reuse question of how many additional flights the Eastern Range can absorb without extending turnarounds. The next published schedule revision will indicate whether a second Florida slot opens. Lab Padre stream viewers noted new Starbase tower arm movements and additional ground equipment staging near the launch mount. Observers on the thread interpreted the activity as preparation for an upcoming integrated vehicle static fire. Florida launch spotting accounts reported the Vandenberg rideshare liftoff visible on marine radar feeds despite the midnight local time. Several users posted time-stamped images of the plume from coastal vantage points. As SpaceX commenters compiled a running list of the 81 payloads on the recent rideshare, highlighting the mix of technology demonstration and commercial CubeSats. Worth keeping an eye on is the analysis arguing that Starship development costs and flight cadence requirements are diverting resources from nearer-term lunar lander alternatives, potentially delaying U.S. crewed moon landings. The piece frames the architecture's dependence on rapid orbital refueling as a schedule risk. Resolution would require either demonstrated refueling success or a parallel lander program funded at scale. On the AI front, SpaceX disclosed plans for a StarMind AI satellite constellation that would place processing nodes in orbit and route traffic over laser intersatellite links. The architecture aims to move inference workloads closer to data sources while leveraging existing Starlink laser hardware. A satirical report claiming SpaceX had absorbed xAI and rebranded as SpaceX AI circulated but carried no corroborating details from either company. From an engineering standpoint, the recent midnight Falcon 9 rideshare from Vandenberg placed 81 spacecraft into sun-synchronous orbit through a sequence of 2 second-stage burns separated by a coast phase. The limiting factor is not thrust but the propellant mass that must be carried to perform the plane change and circularization burns after the initial insertion. Each additional kilogram of payload therefore requires either more propellant or a more efficient trajectory that still satisfies the customer's orbital elements. SpaceX's solution has been to standardize the deployment profile so the second stage can release satellites over a 2.5-hour window, while the stage itself remains in a stable attitude. This approach trades a modest increase in battery and attitude control propellant for the ability to serve many distinct orbital planes from a single launch. The resulting idiot index for the upper stage mission is lowered because the same hardware that flies 30+ times on simpler LEO missions now amortizes its fixed mass across a higher value, multi-plane manifest. The next engineering checkpoint is whether the same stage can repeat the long-duration deployment sequence on a shorter pad turnaround, which would directly test the reuse margin that has driven the half-year launch record. If battery thermal margins or cold gas reserves prove adequate, the architecture could support even denser rideshare manifests without requiring a new upper stage variant. And a quick market note, SPCX is at $160.42, up 1.8%. Before we go, Starbase hardware progress and Falcon reuse margins remain the clearest signals to track this week. That's your SpaceX news for today. SPCX is trading at $160.42, up 1.8%. If the show saves you time, a rating or review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify genuinely helps new listeners find it. I'm Patrick in Vancouver. Thanks for listening. See you tomorrow. And before you go, this show is part of the NARA Network, a family of daily podcasts on tech, science, and markets. Each one a short, sharp briefing you can finish on the commute. If today earned its place in your feed, here's your next listen. Environmental Intelligence, the Environment and Climate Policy Brief for Canada. Find every show free at naranetwork.com. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.